hopefully 100 years from now, people will walk by your name and they'll say, man, Adam Carolla, I loved him. I'm so glad that he got a star.
They'll probably go, who the hell's that? Oh, let me put my cigarette out. But it's a weird thing. Part of me is like, who cares? Another part is like, oh man, do you understand how surreal it is? Because I was so far away from that life for such a large part of my life. Unlike you, I didn't have a whiff of success really, literally until I turned 30. It was all sort of, I was working at it, but there no breaks, no success whatsoever until my 30th birthday. It's funny. I had a funny conversation with my daughter and like her 5 friends. It's nice. It's nice when your kids get a little older and they come online and they kind of understand. They become adults and they become almost friends, colleagues. Like you can talk to them like an adult. They understand stuff.
Yeah.
And they said they're all about to turn 20 basically. And I had these 5 girls, and they're like, hey, you're getting a star on the Walk of Fame. That's pretty cool. And I said, yeah. And I said, I got a pretty good job. I do what I want, and that's what I do. And I work a lot, but it's not really work because I'm doing what I want to do, and I'm enjoying myself, and I'm being with people. And it's not what I used to do, which is hang out on a construction site, which I didn't want to do. So I'm doing what I want. And if you guys can, do what you want, then you're never really going to work a day in your life, sort of speech, right? And they're all like, yeah, that's what we want to do. And I said, okay, but here's the caveat. When I was your age, that's when I embarked on the journey. But I did not see a nickel or any success until I was 30. So would you guys be willing to do this if it meant 1 decade of nothing? Disappointment, some frustration, some setbacks, and no money. Would you still work at it that hard if you didn't have any success until you're 30? And I could see them in their eyes, like 30, that's old. That's a long, when you're 19 about to turn 20 and you start talking about 30, that feels a real long ways away.
Yeah.
And I could see them kind of go, oh, that's different. What I was picturing is doing what I want to do now, not sucking it up for a decade and then doing it. And that's the delayed gratification part. And that's the part I wanted to get into with you, because I just saw this graph and this study over the weekend that somebody tweeted to me, and I found it to be really, really interesting, but only because I already knew it. I always used to talk to Dr. Drew, and I was just talking on this show the other day about delayed gratification and kids and what determined outcome and success and failure across the board, by the way. Drugs, relationships, divorce, crime, prison, all this stuff is all determined by self-control, basically. And they followed a group, and I don't know if you've seen this, but they followed a group of kids from birth to, was it New Zealand? Yeah, New Zealand. In New Zealand, they just followed kids from birth all the way to like 45. And they studied them early when they were like 2, 3, 4 to see who had self-control, meaning delayed gratification, impulse control, that kind of stuff, right? And then they followed them throughout their life. Physical health problems, like literally 100% almost versus 20%, meaning, they smoked, they drank, they ate junk food, they didn't exercise, they had impulse control problems. Substance dependence off the charts versus the control people. Financial difficulty off the charts compared to the people that had self-control. Criminal convictions much higher than the ones that had self-control. And single parenthood All the stuff you don't want for your society is determined by your ability to have self-control or delayed gratification. It can be worked on. It can be taught. By the way, they accounted for IQ, which really didn't make much of a difference. Family of origin did not make much of a difference. Even between siblings in the same family, if one had self-control and the other didn't, even raised under the same roof, they still had the same results. It's all about self-control and delayed gratification. I got to think a lot of dads not being in the house is a big problem with that. And that's the only thing we should be talking about as a society. And we do not talk about it at all. I lived it. When I was 20, I looked at all my friends. My nickname, your nickname is Champ. My nickname was Walt. Why was my nickname Walt? My nickname was Walt because they called me Grandpa, and they started calling me Grandpa Walton because I was the guy who would stand there while everyone was just drinking beer and hanging out, and I would go, "What's the plan, gentlemen? What are we going to be doing when we're 30? We're living week to week. No one has insurance. How can we raise a family? We have no financial stability." And they're like, "Have another beer, Walt." And they'd laugh me out of the room. And I was like, I'm working on it. I'm not gonna be on a construction site when I'm 50. And sure enough, everyone's on a construction site today, and they're all old. And I grew up with these people. I know exactly who they are and how it works. And we got to figure this out. And someone's got to start talking about it.
Yeah, man. That's so fascinating.